Hello everyone and welcome to another Starcraft 2 replay cast. For this one we are doing a bot match between myself, Ketroc, and the number one bot on the ladder, MicroMachine. So this is from the King of this Hill series. I'll put a link to that in the description, but it was a best of 5 between myself and MicroMachine as I attempted to dethrone the current King of the Hill. So if you're interested in watching more games between these two bots, you can check out that link. Anyways, spawning in the bottom left is myself, the red Terran, and just to be clear, this is not myself, the human, but the bot I created. And in the top right is the blue Terran. It is MicroMachine. So a little bit different of a build here. You can see I selected Tank Viking. If you see my bot play in the past, you've probably seen my Mass Raven build, or my Sky Terran build, which revolves a lot around Cloak Banshees and denying detection. This Tank Viking build is more a response specifically to Cyclones. Now, Cyclones in the bot meta are extremely strong. If you imagine how well humans micro one Cyclone, and how it can basically kill almost any unit with proper micro, well, with the bots, it's not too much more difficult to micro 15 or 20 Cyclones that same way, right? Because bots have unlimited APM. So for that reason, I've been struggling versus Cyclones. I've tried to get the Banshee micro just right. I've tried creating Cyclones of my own. I finally gave up and did the if you can't beat them, join them strategy, which worked to a degree, except it kind of just means I'm doing the same thing as MicroMachine, and MicroMachine is a lot better at it, has a much more developed bot. So instead, I came up with this idea, kind of inspired by early Wings of Liberty play, and that's just to go straight tanks and Vikings. In early Wings of Liberty, the meta was kind of like tank bio. And then people kind of realized, well, the Marines just kind of die off. They can never get in range of enemy tanks, so it became more tank-centric. And then people realized, well, whoever wins in tank versus tank battles is whoever has air superiority. So it became all about Tank Viking, which eventually evolved into almost pure Viking with just a handful of tanks. And then people realized, oh, wait, if I just make some bio, I can actually just run over this handful of tanks. So then the whole meta just kind of fell apart. But I liked that concept of the Tank Viking versus Cyclone play, because tanks can really zone out the Cyclones, especially when you get them in the tanks in higher numbers. And then with air superiority, you can sort of use your Vikings to grant vision for your tanks and to own the sky battle. In terms of this game, meanwhile, it seems I've done my normal fast expand as I do as a human player. So gasless fast expand, bunker, wall off, and now it's going into double factory. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, this is really weird actually. One thing I did to my build also is I decided to go orbitals on my first 3 bases since I'm getting some more mech units, and this will increase my economy. And it's actually my opponent getting the planetary at the natural expansion. So this is the first where I'm not getting the PF and my opponent is. Tank on the way for MicroMachine. Meanwhile, my tank production is just beginning as well. Starport about halfway done on both sides, I would think. Yes. So adding in 2 starports, we're going up to 2 factory, 2 starport, and that should be more than enough to production to support the amount of gas I currently have. Yeah, I only got 2 in each gas. It looks like it's rotating between 1 and 2, but that's because I'm actually individually microing my SCVs just to make them a little bit faster, take away some of the deceleration time when they approach the gas geyser and when they approach the command center. And you'll see the same thing with the workers on the command center itself, where it's constantly rotating as I'm microing them from move commands into harvest commands. A couple Reapers did show up. They both survived and got shooed away by my siege tank there. Third starport is added. The way this build works is it's going to be 2 factory for the entire game. And then if I start banking resources and everything is active, then I'll add more starports. So if I get to a crazy economy, the starport count will get larger. But otherwise it's going to be, maybe 4 starports will probably be the number it'll stop at. The factories will be constantly be producing siege tanks. And then for my star parts, I'll build Ravens when I don't need Vikings, but otherwise I'm going to be building Vikings. And needing Vikings is going to be very much based on my opponent's Viking count. Third base going down in position for MicroMachine. That's going to give them a little bit of an economic lead, as my third base is not even halfway done and I have to float it over. And that kind of sucks because I'm kind of fully saturated at this point. With 16 of 16 on the minerals and the gas fully saturated, at this point we're just going to be distance mining with the leftover SCVs. Which is actually logic I want to change at some point. I think even with the speed mining it makes sense to triple up on these far away patches. Especially as the distance mining can often leave your SCVs vulnerable to getting picked off. So we're attempting to push out here, but the push is getting heavily delayed as I keep finally getting the Reapers down. Or 1 Reaper down at least. Banshee is doing something. Not sure what that was about. But push is slowly getting across the map. Probably zoom out a lot of this on this match because these bot fights often take place in much larger areas. We aren't limited by screen space and what it can see. So oftentimes, and units being individually microed, sometimes the fights can span like multiple screens. Unfortunately, my Vikings are getting shooed away. Able to take out a couple of MicroMachine siege tanks, although we have lost the air superiority. There are Vikings on the production tab for Ketroc, however there's just as many on the production tab for MicroMachine, so this could be difficult. Scan actually ran out, so we weren't able to get off that siege. And now with the Cloaked Banshee here, we are in a lot of trouble. I do have Vikings nearby, but they're very hesitant as they know that they're kind of outgunned by the opponent's Vikings. And this Banshee's just going to town. 4 kills already, and I believe, some of it might be SCVs, because I do bring some SCVs to help repair. But a lot of it is going to be siege tanks as well. Yeah, if you look at the units last tab, you can see he's already taken down 6 tanks, and this push is getting cleaned up very quickly. 2 tanks remaining. And make that 0 tanks. 9 tanks going down to a mere 2 of MicroMachine. And a lot of our matches often come down to kind of how the initial engagement goes. Because whoever does well in the first couple engagements can keep the pressure on, and if you're keeping the pressure on, you're probably getting ahead economically as well. And yeah, so I'm in a very tough spot here. The only nice thing is it's kind of a couple of choke points here. They do have high ground, so maybe I can take some good fights, and if I can take some good fights, maybe I can get back on the offense again. Yeah, I was actually able to walk into my third base here as we have moved the tanks up to block this natural expansion. Attempting to get up at my 5th base up top. MicroMachine has already taken his 5th, even floating out to take his 6th. But yeah, maybe we'll stay zoomed out actually. But yeah, having trouble getting SCVs up there. Kind of just getting them picked off as they're moving through, so a lot of suicide SCVs. The ones I send to mine up there are smart enough to be smart, but the ones I send to build up there will just aimlessly go up there, not caring if they're walking through siege tanks. That base actually goes down. Might have actually been a good thing if that was just going to be a retard magnet for my SCVs, but yeah, back to 4 base, which is, I guess, okay at the moment, but looking at MicroMachine going up to 6 bases now, I'm a little worried, and of course, these 4 bases aren't going to last very long. You can see we're actually down to 4 patches in the main base, and soon to be the same at the natural. We are on 8 gas geysers, which I guess is the important part, but even that's not going to last forever. If we bring up the units tab, we can see the Viking count is, we do have a lead here of 18 to 13, although my Vikings are still somewhat hesitant, it looks like. Siege tank's trying to push up that ramp, and that's not going to go well for them. Taking out a tank, even a battle cruiser on the field now for MicroMachine. And a lot of extra production on the field now. When MicroMachine's building production out in the middle of the map, you know you're in trouble. That's when you know his economy is going really well. Filled up his main base and still requires more space for production. I mean, our tanks are getting some nice hits over this launching field. We do have the SCV repair still functioning on the siege tanks, which is nice. My sky units also fly back home whenever they need to repair. So, where my repair code isn't like a catch-all, it does cover my sky units, and now it covers my siege tanks as well, or siege tanks get repaired on the field. I'm able to have pushed out from my 3rd base with some tanks, snuck up a base at the 6th, cleared out the tanks that were holding me in, and I think we've finally broken out. And just in the nick of time, just when things are starting to look really bad on the economy front at home. Really important to establish a 5th base. Now, there's only a 1 gas on that base, but it's kind of like a 1.5 gas in that it's a rich geyser. So if we bring up the income tab, you can see our gas is, you know, close. We're bringing in maybe 200, 300 less a minute to the MicroMachine. But close is good. Actually, I have enough firepower now to gun down the battle cruisers before they can jump away. Battle cruisers are really nice to supplement your army with when you have air control. But if you don't have air control, then they can keep you from getting the Viking count that you require. And I think that might have happened here. MicroMachine kind of teched up to battle cruiser, and during that time I was able to get the Viking count to deal with MicroMachine's Vikings. And I would hope that would be the case, right? Because basically, I'm only building starports, and I'm only building them for the purpose of building Vikings, so it would be nice to get those Vikings out. The one thing I've actually never implemented in like this bot, and it seems like a very basic thing I should have done early on, but it's reactors. I haven't figured out how the production even works with reactored units, like where you can produce 2 at a time. And I've never actually written any code to produce a reactor, so. When my starports need to build things like Vikings, I just keep them naked, and when I finally need to build something that requires a tech lab, then I'll put a tech lab on at that point. So cyclones are really good at dealing with my air units, however we do have these siege tanks now to help zone them out. I can also pull back my air unit instantly when the lock-on goes on, and since the cyclone can't chase due to all these siege tanks, Things are looking quite good here. During this time, you can also see we've exploded onto the map as we are taking multiple bases. And even floating out a command center to, I guess, here. Oh, that Raven's gotta run. You gotta run. You're faster than Vikings. Actually, no, they're not. That's the one thing we missed in this patch. Is the Viking change. We're kind of mimicking the current balance patch because Blizzard stopped supporting the botting API. At least for Linux, they have. If you didn't know, there's actually a headless SC2 client for Linux that Google use when they're, or DeepMind use when they're making AlphaStar. What was my point? Yeah, so anyways, we're mimicking the current patch, and the one thing that is missing is the Raven changes. So the interference matrix wasn't switched to 75 energy, it's still 50, and the Raven speed buff doesn't exist. Vikings are very afraid of MicroMachine's Vikings at the moment. If we bring up the units tab, you can see we're on very even Viking counts. But ridiculously high. I don't think even in our bot matches, I don't think I've ever seen us have like over 70 Vikings in the game in total either. Almost, it's gonna be 80 in a moment. Looks like the Vikings are very afraid to engage here. Meanwhile, the siege tanks are pushing forward, but there's no air support on either side. We have forced this command center to lift off, and we've established some of the extra bases ourselves, which is really nice. In fact, all 4 of like these neutral-ish bases are all mine. Ooh, I wonder how that happened. 4 and 1 gas geyser. Able to establish a lock on there and take one out. And going to be able to happen again. I need to kind of stagger the unsieging of siege tanks. My units mostly live in a world on their own. They don't know what the units around them are doing. So I think the easiest way to do that would just be to create a random delay on when I unsiege. So if I decide that I want all my tanks to unsiege, some of them will unsiege immediately, some of them will wait 1 second, some of them will wait 3 seconds. And that'll create a nice little stagger. Even with a large Viking lead here, 47 to 41, my Vikings are actually quite afraid to engage. And that is strange, and that is actually, spoiler, going to turn into a bug. I finally tracked down what caused this. We can talk about it later. I actually had an offensive planetary on the siege in that base there we missed out on. Down to just 6 tanks, and continuing to just produce Vikings at the moment. Our upgrades are complete, so we're at 3-3. And Vikings are getting pushed back in the corner. So this game looks almost unlosable for me at this point. But unfortunately, this game is going to get out of hand because of this. I have 2 full pages of Vikings here, for the most part. What is that? 48 minus 5, so we got 43 Vikings here. And they're all idling in my main base. So what looked like an unwinnable game, this is kind of the cool part, and the frustrating part about bot games is that the game is never truly over. As dead as an opponent looks, there's always a chance of your bot bugging out. Some weird edge case you didn't prepare for. And that is happening here. So all the Vikings are stuck at home, and the only thing we have going on our offense is the hotkey 8 attack of sending out mass planetaries. Even the... looks like the tanks are even coming home to assist my Vikings in this hopeless cause. Economy is looking great, however. I mean, MicroMachine has not been able to expand beyond its first 5 bases here. I mean, he did have the 6th base for a while, but he doesn't at the moment. Meanwhile, we've taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bases. So, income. Basically double. I could even call that triple when I'm looking at the gas. SCVs, are you attacking or are you going to mine? With the Cyclone, it's probably enough to cut through this before we get off any blasts. But we do have some more planetaries moving in. MicroMachine trying to expand as well, but it looks like he's discovering that these bases are all taken. As he's getting vision of these bases, I'm like, oh, that one's taken, this one's taken. Allowing these missile turrets to get some shots in, even taking down an orbital. Meanwhile, the Viking Flower is very active at home. All 47 Vikings and even 3 tanks and the 2 repairing SCVs are hanging out here, and the Raven. Basically my entire army's there. Ketroc has decided it's time to win with planetaries only. If we can do it on Win Cheese Fails, why not do it in a 20-minute macro game? So just kind of bleeding off resources as the 40+ Vikings of MicroMachine. I mean, he's got to be up there, right? The 50 Vikings of MicroMachine, my goodness, are making quick work of all these flying command centers. Whose command center is that anyways? That's MicroMachine's command center. I mean, these random planetaries I'm throwing in front of bases are great when you're also keeping him busy with your army, right? Because he can't defend the planetaries and defend the army at the same time if all things are equal. But sending them out on their own, they're just, you know, the odds of one even completing is so low. We are continuing to build command centers though, and with so many out on the field, it's actually... I think the way it works is I try to send out 2 planetaries for every base my opponent has, try to put 2 PFs in each base. But if I've already built command centers for all those reasons, then the following command centers will just become an orbital farm. Yeah, so it looks like these are the closest units to my main base, so that's what I want to attack. But tanks can't kill those, and my Vikings are broken, so... yeah. Well, 3 planetaries up here. We'll shut down this base at least for a little while. Not sure what happened to the half-dead base here, but it looks like it's been replaced, and now MicroMachine can finally start mining over here. However, with high ground planetaries, you can only kind of mine there. You have to wait for the planetaries to go down first, I suppose. Orbital farm is getting larger. More command centers over here too. Orbital counts can actually get pretty big. So with how broken my bot is, to have a fighting chance here, maybe there's an opportunity to starve out my opponent. You look, see MicroMachine does have a decent bank, but not an exorbitant amount. So if we can start muling his bases and kind of just clear the map of minerals, then maybe we can turn this into a draw of some sort. Ow, okay. Never mind. The Vikings have returned. Looks like Ketroc has finally snapped out of this. And they're making up for lost time, just going across and powering through everything they see. 2 command centers at 1 base will solve that problem. Big engagement of Vikings coming up here. Both over 40. Now I say my units often kind of do their own thing, but in this case they actually don't. They're actually given these commands more as a group mentality, where I think MicroMachines are all kind of individual mentality. And you can see that's allowing me to kind of cluster up more and to get more shots in. A lot of overkill as well, but I think that's okay. With each volley killing a Viking, I don't really mind if it's going to be overkill as well. Siege tanks even getting position here to help protect me from the Marines, as the tanks have also rejoined the battle. And what looked like was going to take a miracle for me to win or draw out this game is now looking like it's back in my hands once more, despite the Viking siesta where I lost like 15, 25 command centers. We're back in it. And you can see the bank of MicroMachine has all but disappeared. He does have some gas, but the minerals are gone. And it looks like he's put it back into Cyclones and more Vikings. As I suppose that kind of makes sense, as he was losing to Mass Viking over here. And Vikings are a little bit scared of these Cyclones, but the siege tanks are coming back to assist. I've been zoomed out this whole time. Oh well, we'll make this a zoomed out game. I think it's required. So many units, such long range attacks. Did look like MicroMachine was able to take this base at least for a moment, but there wasn't much or any minerals left at the time. Couple Cyclones working away at this planetary, and they do have that double damage upgrade of the mag field accelerator. Vikings still very afraid of the Cyclone. You can only shoot one of you, dummies. What do they do? Envelop the Cyclone to get around to shoot the Viking they wanted to hit. Overscanned that, but the purpose of it was the mass muling. Looks like there's a bug in how many times I scan it though. And stealing any minerals out of there is great. They don't even have to get back home as long as they take, each of them take 25 minerals away from MicroMachine, who is desperate for minerals at the moment. Yeah, if we look at the army size, you can see it's a full 10k plus versus now 6,000 for MicroMachine. And a lot of his units are kind of hanging out near his bases, and I think they're doing that because they're coming back to repair. But there's no ability to repair them because of the low income. Those SCVs are limited on time. They better get out of there. Or it's planetary time. There we go. Some of them making them out. Some of them making it out. The other ones getting hit. I can't believe his planetary has shot so many SCVs and only has 4 kills. Yes, there's certain times where that extra 5 hit points that SCVs have over drones and probes make a big difference. And where it's rare that it comes into effect, planetary is a big one. It basically doubles the hit points of the SCV, and that they can survive 2 hits instead of 1. A few Banshees stuck up in the north here for MicroMachine. Planetary attempt number 2 on these million SCVs. I think I've run out of locations where I can build command centers. I think this is the last one left right here. So I'm only building command centers one at a time. I kind of pre-calculate all these positions at the start of the game. And yeah, I filled them all up with orbitals now. So only this one is where we're going to get offensive planetaries from. Speaking of which, we do have one here. Keeping these SCVs a little bit trapped. Kind of reaching a part in the game where you almost never get to. I thought that my SCVs are always supposed to be active, doing something. You know, if there's nowhere to mine, you distance mine. If there's nowhere to distance mine, you just kind of suicide. You know, especially if I'm maxed out and the minerals are all gone on the map. But yeah, it's code that's hard to test, and I guess it doesn't work. Or maybe I changed it and I forgot. Meanwhile, my bot has finally decided it doesn't need Vikings anymore. And is going back to the default starport unit of Ravens. And that appears how we're going to win the game here. So the siege tanks are slowly moving through. And it's just going to be a slow death. MicroMachine on 0 minerals. He doesn't have any code to GG, I don't believe. For a couple reasons. One, it's like, why put time into something that doesn't help your bot win when you always have a to-do list of 1,000 things you need to work on? And 2, MicroMachine never loses, so why create pessimistic code? And if we take a look at the minimap, that's why we're going slow here. The most important thing I've coded into my bot. So the way my mass orbital code kind of worked is once I get over a 3,000 mineral bank, I start muling my opponent instead of muling myself. My builds are typically very gas heavy, so I don't really need the minerals, but often my opponent does need minerals, so it's nice to steal a bunch of minerals from him. And, you know, if my opponent has no minerals and I have no minerals, then there's only one place left to use the mules, and that is BMing in the middle of the map. Wow, that's a lot of mules to write that. 24 and 23. The easy shadow. Oh, there's no shadow. Damn you, low graphics. And this hybrid graphics thing is I set in shadows to blobs. Notice how the shadow is directly underneath the Vikings? That just makes it easier to like know exactly where air units are, given the perspective. There's this flyer helper thing too that draws that line straight down, but I like the blob shadow as well. By the way, that's a cloaked banshee that they're all chasing. As soon as this banshee runs out of energy, it's going to have about 100 missiles shoot at it because 50 Vikings 2-shot. And there you have it. A very long game, but I thought it'd be a nice game to put on the channel. I haven't done much of anything about my bot on this channel, so I thought it'd be good to put a cool game in there. And this one had a little bit of everything. Back and forth. I do a push out, I fall apart. MicroMachine has the lead. I pull back into it. I get so far ahead I can't lose, but then my bot bugs out, so we get to see what happens when bots fail. And then, of course, the BM ending, the most important part. So our ladder season does end next week. At which point the positions will be locked in for the ProBots tournament, which takes place on ES Champ channel. If you haven't checked that out, it's like, I find it at least very interesting. You may want to check out some bot matches there of the top 16 bots. They play in a tournament. And yeah, next season of that will start soon after the end of the ladder season. So I think mid-June, end of June, somewhere around there. So the other thing is, once the ladder season ends, I don't have to worry too much about keeping my bot super competitive on the ladder, and maybe we can come up with some new features and keep it a little bit hidden from the rest of the community. Bring some surprises to the ProBots tournament. We've actually built, I built it so generically you can just put in a string, like just put in a word and it'll write it out on the screen for you. But that said, I've only defined the shape of like 6 different letters, so it's very limited in what I can say. So we got all the important ones. Oh no, miscalculated, not enough mules. That was GC for some reason. I'm a poker player. I mean, that just means good call. Good call. Let's go ahead and speed this up. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll call out the end of this video. And I'm out of here. Have a good one, guys. See ya.